Call to order. It's
This
6:10.
meeting is being recorded.
Roll call for our members, regular members. Angie DeSanto,
Here I am.
John Kopek. Oh, sorry, John's not going to be here. He actually asked for Hugh to be seated. Is Hugh here?
Haven't seen him.
Jesse Burnham,
I'm here.
Garth Bean.
Yes.
Okay, Paul Varga,
Here.
Christina Davis, Esther Jagosinski, and myself, Judith Austin. So we have 5 members to seat.
That's
Okay, I'm moving on. The presentation by Region 19. We'll give you the floor, Sharon.
Thank
I
you.
have a question. I have a question.
What's that?
Who's seated for John?
Well, John had requested Hugh, but Hugh's not here, and Christina, I believe, said she wasn't going to be here in the first meeting, but she'll be here at the second meeting.
Got it. Okay.
We're not voting on anything anyway, right? It's just discussion, so.
Correct. And there's
Okay.
5 of us, so we're good.
Okay. Thanks.
I can vote twice if that helps, Judy. I mean, if
No,
it came down to
Garth,
voting.
behave yourself, please.
Okay.
All right, Sharon, we're not going to take up too much of your time. Go ahead.
No worries, no worries. So I was actually a little surprised about a presentation, so I'm prepared to do a couple things. I did a huge presentation of my original superintendent's budget. It was really long. The second presentation that I did on Tuesday was my revised presentation that really just summarized the budgets for the past few years, my proposed budget, and then the revised budget, along with what the impact would be for the sending towns. So I can share either. And then if there's some specific questions, I can actually refer back to the original budget presentation, which goes over things like our mission and our vision and some of the things that have been in place for quite some time. This is my second year here. I came with COVID, so I joined the team in July of 2020 and started working with the staff, I think probably in May and June as I transitioned in, and luckily had some opportunity to spend time with Krieger, which was such a pleasure, and it's rare that you get that amount of time with the superintendent who's retiring. So my time here has really been trying to re-enter school after being out for being fully remote during the March to June experience, and then re-entering for the 2021 school year as a hybrid, and then working with the re-entry committee to come back in full, with the landscape being very variable, not really knowing what it was for the 21-22 school year. So what I will do, if you could allow me to share my screen, I'm happy to share a couple of slides with you and take you through the budget piece, the abridged version of the budget.
That's fine.
And then
Yeah,
if you
that's
have
fine.
some,
You can give us the short version because we're limited in your time. So, and I know it kind of sprung you by surprise by the look on your face. So, yeah, we'll do what you. We'll do the short.
No worries.
Okay.
So this is, let me just get this slideshow so you can see the whole screen. So this was a summary of our past few budgets, and really it's there's a function of a lot of things. I've only been here for a couple of them. So if we start with the 2021 budget, that's the budget that I inherited from Jill Krieger. There were a lot of things going on at that time, and I don't really know all of the details that allowed her to have a decrease in her budget. That's very rare. I know that there were some things that were going on. Usually for that kind of a decrease, it has to do with staffing. So I do know that due to some changes in enrollment during that time, there were some positions that were not filled due to attrition at the time. So Fast forward to 21, 22, coming out of COVID, we had a 2.29% increase. My proposed budget for this year and my original numbers that didn't make it to the board, we actually started at a 6.48% budget increase just based on the asks and, looking at the budget from, what do we need to continue the programming that we currently have, and looking at all the asks from staff and those pieces. Before it made it to the board, I made some cuts and came in at a 3.82% increase. The revised budget came in at a 2.42. And the reason for that was that we were, actually, I'll tell you the reason in a minute. I'm gonna go my slides in order. So that 2.42% budget, if we look at the adopted, it shows the contributions from each of the partner towns. It shows then for the 22-23 pro forma what was predicted, which is always, the pro forma is at that point just a prediction. So that original pro forma that came in at 4.4% total increase for the sending towns had Ashford at a 1.3. So this was my 3.8% increase. That was my original ask to the board, my original presentation. 5.69% increase to the Mansfield and 3.4. So I'm sure you all are aware that that amount is calculated on the number of students. And I know that it is well known amongst all of the sending towns that every year there's always one town that takes a bigger hit based on just the number of student increases. The thing that's a little bit of a challenge with a regional budget, a regional town budget, and with a budget that really is dependent on the number of students, is it's variable. And we take that original prediction based on our October 1 enrollments. And we try to get a little more precise as the year goes on. However, talking with the schools, getting their number of students that they actually have, we know that after October 1, there's still enrollments, there's withdrawals. So last year, I can tell you, Willington had a really significant increase based on the number of students that enrolled between the previous year's October 1 numbers and then the following year's October 1 numbers. So this year, in my adjusted pro forma, based on some reductions that we were able to take, some savings, I should say, that we were able to find, and some reductions that we were able to take. So to the far left where it says adjusted pro forma, this reflects the 2.42% increase in my revised budget. And you'll see that Ashford, because of that shift, actually has a decrease in their budget of $8,933, or a 0.03% change, a 0.03 decrease. Mansfield was reduced from a 5.6% increase to a 4.03% increase, and Willington was brought down from a 3.4 to a 1.8. So that's the good news that I was talking about prior to starting the conversation. And the way that that occurred was we have shared financial services with the town of Mansfield, and their finance director and her team worked very closely with our health insurance folks around the health insurance surplus fund, as well as looking at the predicted percentages that they get at the beginning of the budget season from our consultants, and what was actually coming in based on the actual claims that were being recorded. So there were some savings there. So there were $162,159 from our health insurance, which is contributed to utilizing some of the surplus funds that have been in place, trying to get that surplus budget down a little bit. and then savings in MERS. So with the MERS account, it was the original increase, percentage increase was actually less than the actual. And that actually just came in, gosh, at the end of last week as I was preparing for the budget presentation this week.
Sharon,
there's-
who is your carrier with your health insurance?
We are Anthem.
Okay, the state partnership?
Yes,
Okay,
I believe so. I was looking to explore savings in electric, and because with the solar panels last year, we received some advice from actually the engineers who made some predictions as to what they thought we would save from starting the solar panels in December. November, December is when they actually went online. They overestimated a little bit of that savings for this year. We're going to be okay, but Charmaine Bradshaw Hill, who's the finance director for Mansfield, spoke with the consultant from the company, who gave us still a savings, but she advised me not to take a savings there. That number that he predicted is probably going to be much closer than the number that was predicted last year, and that we should not take a savings there. After a couple years, we'll have some historical data and maybe be able to predict a little bit more. We'll also know how much we actually make from generating energy over time. So that'll be some information I think that'll help guide some future budget decisions. Additionally, we have our ESSER 3. I know it's the ARP, but we call it ESSER 3. Drives the State Department of Ed crazy. But I budgeted for professional development, both in the operating budget and in the, actually, I'll talk about PD and curriculum. Those were lines that were not consistently funded in our budget, yet very essential to the ongoing learning of our staff, especially as it relates to coming out of COVID and really going down the road of a student-centered approach to instruction, as well as focusing on social emotional learning. Those have been the really two big pieces that, in our preparation for our reentry plan, feedback from the state, guidance from the state, really focusing on being attentive and personalizing the experiences for kids, knowing that they had variable experiences in their remote and hybrid circumstances. And, it's my goal, it's my, and I can share the vision statement or the goal statement that we've created as a district. It really is the goal that our students, who are very capable, come out of this pandemic not further victimized by a one-size-fits-all approach to instruction, when our students have always come to us with different strengths and areas of need of support, but even more so coming out of the pandemic. So some of that funding that I had put into the operating budget, I also had budgeted for in ARP ESSER, and we can take a savings there just by applying those curricular funds to the ESSER without, we worked really hard, and it's always in the back of my mind to make sure that we are not setting ourselves up for a huge funding cliff when those grant funds go away, and making sure that we're prepared for that. There was an ask for a 0.5 library media specialist, an instructional assistant to help the library media specialist, who's shifting a lot of her work to a makerspace type of experience, so that it's open for students who want to explore interests, to be innovative. She requires a little bit more support, and one of the support individuals was an IT person who would help in the media center, but with the one-to-one program that was implemented 2 years ago, we needed that person doing IT full-time. So she's asked for that position. Initially, it was something, because it wasn't a position that was already filled, was something that could have been cut, but that's something that we can actually move to the ESSER grant as well. It's a similar situation with both maintenance and technology. So I'm sure that you've looked at our previous budgets. You might be privy to it was new information to me. I'm going to be honest with you, coming from a K-12 district where you expended all of your funds at the end of the fiscal year. And if you didn't, it went back to the town. So in a regional district, I learned that first year very gratefully, that it goes back into, goes back to the region, and that there are surplus accounts to accommodate that. So because there were monies that couldn't be expended due to COVID, so the first year shut down from March to June or March to July, we saved a lot of money. Although I wasn't there, we saved a lot of money in transportation for athletics because we couldn't run programs. So there was far more of a surplus than you would expect or want for an operating budget. So over the past couple of years, when so the same for the 2021 school year, the beginning of the year, we didn't run as many athletic programs. We gradually increased that as the world opened up a little bit, but there were savings there as a result. Also, the schools weren't open as often. So there were savings in electricity and in utilities and things like that. So any of the surplus over the last couple of years have been used to offset capital accounts. So capital surplus for the turf field that's been in planning for quite some time, in order to avoid kind of a bonding type of situation. We've been building that account to be able to not have to go back to the towns to ask for that. And so some of the money was put into that. The other big chunk of money where some of the surplus has gone and has been into surplus has gone to debt service, because that was a line that we could fund where there could be direct savings to each of the sending towns, because that was really a concern of my board, was to make sure that if there is this surplus funds available, to make sure that is offsetting the contributions from each of the partner towns. And so that was actually applied. That was in my first presentation. We applied about, I want to say $283,000 of the surplus that was in debt, or that we had put into debt service, to offset what we would be paying this year in debt service. And so that was able to defray some of the cost to the sending towns. And it's a pretty healthy fund at this point. And right now we're in a place, there's a lot of goings on right now at with the State Department in regards to projects and to building projects. You probably have seen it in the news. So our finance director, they have all of our information. We're just waiting on our reimbursement from the state for the roof and for the solar project that was completed last year. So the maintenance and the technology, they asked each for, maintenance asked for a $30,000 increase for building supplies, that anticipating that the cost of everything is going up, as we know it certainly is. 15 of that could be funded or will be funded through ARP ESSER 3 for all of our supplies for sanitization that will continue on into next year. And then the technology increase, we had accounted for some technology as well in the ARP ESSER. And so they asked for a $43,000 increase to technology for the one-to-one program. But we were able to put some of that into ARP ESSER to support that. So that was a savings. One of the positions that was requested by our special ed director was a full-time psychologist. We have, just under 1,100 kids on the EO campus, and we have one school psychologist. When you look at the proportion and the number of requests and referrals that we have for special education, we really do need to have another psychologist. I think it's important to note that over the past few years, my first year, we have a student center where students who need academic support can go. They can either, their teacher can send them there for support, or students can sign up to go there for support. And it was always run by an instructional assistant. The first year that we came back from COVID, we made the decision to, since that individual was leaving, to make it a certified school counselor, so that students had a certified professional to help them figure out where they're having issues with the learning, and also to communicate and partner with the teachers so that it was a team effort to make sure that students, if there were specific instructional needs that kids needed, that counselor is able to support the students, to help the student advocate for themselves, and also to communicate with the teachers to make sure that there are conditions in place to help the student be successful actually in the classroom as opposed to in the student center. So that was one, social, emotional, and a support individual that was added that year. Additionally, this year, we added a social worker who is our homeschool family liaison that was funded this year through our ESSER 2 grant, but he's been absorbed into the operating grant for the operating budget for next year. So he's a certified school counselor. He's also an individual who has experience working for DCF and is really there to help families and students get support through community resources, get support through school resources, and really bridge that gap, especially as we see a lot of students with school anxiety and with having a hard time getting to school, to have an individual to help with that. So he's increasingly increased his caseload over the course of this year as student needs have become more obvious and evident. So those are two positions over the past 2 years specifically dedicated to mental health and student support. The psychologist rounds that out at a third mental health specialist to help that with that support, and also to do some of the testing that is on the plate of the one school psychologist as we increase our number of special education referrals. So that was originally funded in the operating budget, but through conversations and working with our special ed director, we were able to find title funds from the state. So our Title I funding, we could apply $41,000 of our Title I funding by, we have had folks leave that were funded through Title I whose positions won't be replaced. So we are able to move that around and fund through Title I. And then the IDEA grant would traditionally fund our IEP Direct program, which is the platform that houses all of our IEPs and 504s. The state is taking that over and providing a platform for free to schools. So that was a savings that we could apply to the psychologist position. And then for 22-23 only, we're able to apply $17,000 from the ESSER 2 SPED Recovery Activities Grant, because Steve Bain originally budgeted for that grant to cover outside contractors or consultants to pick up some of the slack in the special education assessments. But if we have a full-time psychologist, that individual will be taking care of that. So that ended up translating into a $501,000 cost savings, and brought our budget down to 2.42% of 2.4% increase, which goes back to the numbers from the previous slide. Any questions? At this point, the board hasn't, they have, it's not approved by the board. It's set to be approved in April. Our first meeting in April, I think it's April 4th, is our board meeting for April, and that's when they're set to accept the budget. So we have a meeting next week. We have a meeting, I believe, the following week, and then we have one break, one week of break from meetings, and then we'll have our meeting in April.
Sharon, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. And I think you briefly touched on it, but one of the dilemmas that we're running into on the town side, and I know our local Board of Ed is running into, is fuel cost and that.
Mm-hmm.
How have you addressed that in your budget?
They've increased. So our fuel costs did go up. There's a little bit of, there's some concern about, is it going to be enough? It's that, crystal ball type of a situation.
Yeah.
So, we're also, and I hate to say hope, because I say all the time, I forgot who said it originally, but somebody famous did. Hope is not a strategy. But it's the hope that, even if our gas and oil go up, that our electric, as we get more acclimated to the solar piece, can offset that a bit. But we did calculate an increase in those costs, and at this point, I'd love to say that we're really comfortable with those numbers. I think we're gonna have to see how it tracks because we don't know how high it's gonna go.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, it's really unknown. So, I can tell you this year, I've talked about it at a couple of board meetings. We've had to do a discretionary freeze on our budget this year due to some unexpected special education outplacements. And, those are the things that we'll have to look at if the
Yeah.
fuel costs exceed, what we've planned for increases.
Thank you.
We did, I know Ashford was, amazing. I talked to Craig a while back when he was calculating the increase in our transportation.
Yeah.
And was so apologetic about the increase in fuel and its impact on the busing costs. And, you can't control that.
No,
And
that's the scary part about it.
yeah. And so,
Nor do we have a magic ball that we can look into and figure out what's gonna, because it's so volatile at this point, we don't know what to do really with it.
I think the beautiful thing of it, I have to say, working with Ashford Transportation, Joan is amazing. She's just so accommodating and easy to work with. And, as Ashford Transportation really stayed as flat as they possibly could for us last year. And so, my comment was to Craig was, you can't control the price of diesel fuel.
Right.
And, we certainly appreciated the break last year. We didn't come in expecting that same situation this year. No one's in that situation.
Yeah.
And just, appreciate the partnership. And, he reached out very early so that I knew what the situation was and could budget accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Nice job.
Thank you. The only part that I want to say, and I know you probably already know, but all of the region's superintendents. So, Kelly, who I'm so sad is retiring. I'm happy for her, but sad. Craig and Phil, and also we've been working with the superintendent from Columbia because they do send us so many kids. Have really been working collaboratively over the course of this year with a consultant for Great Schools Partnership. And I am so grateful to be working with such amazing professionals and partners in, I know coming from a K-12 district that your graduate you don't start preparing your graduate in 9th grade, that it is a progression from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. And the more we're aligned in our expectations, communicating that and really working together to make sure that there's an equitable experience for all of our kids from each of the sending towns, that's the work we need to do. And it's been a pleasure to work in that capacity. And I'm excited for what the kids are going to be experiencing along the progression from each of the sending towns. So, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you for taking your time. I know it's unusual for a town to call, but it was nice to meet you and get your
really nice to
perspective on how you saved.
Very nice to meet you. And if there's any questions along the lines, please don't hesitate to call. I'm happy to come back. And an economy of words is not my strength, so you can cut me off anytime.
You did very well.
Do any members have any questions for Sharon? Jesse?
Sharon, I had two things. Not to put you on a spot on it, but I'm very interested in your solar program and what is the actual, as you said, it's too early to tell, but as you get a couple months going and you see what's actually generated,
Mhm.
I'd really like to see that. So if you were the contact person or someone else,
Well, I would say reach out to me.
interested.
You certainly can reach out to me. That's a question that is burning in my brain as well, because I'm a science person. I like to be able to have predictions that are somewhat accurate. So I'm happy to share that information as soon as we have it. I'll have to get it from finance, but my board is very interested in hearing that too. And I'm really, happy to share it as soon as I get it.
Because we're moving in that direction here in our K through 12 or K through 8 school as well. So very interested to find out, what it costs to put up, how much are we actually expected to get back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That I can absolutely share. I don't have it handy right now, but if you wanted to come by and, take a look at the, we have the engineering projections, we have, the whole nugget of both the roofing project and the solar project. And, I can tell you this year, our fuel costs are they're trending down a couple $1,000s a month in savings. So we predicted that I think I took it a $68,000 cut last year, and based on what our engineer told us, we're coming in probably at about $38,000 worth of savings. So now we know a little bit better. So that's closer to the savings that we took this year. But what I don't know, and what I will be happy to share with you as soon as I do, is when we generate electricity, some of that comes back to us. And I don't have those numbers right now.
Okay. And then my other question is there any tests taken at the school that compare where Ashford stands versus the other school, Mansfield and Willington, of how Ashford 8th graders are coming in and where they stand performance wise?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of work with that right now. So, the standardized tests, which, from my experience here in the last 2 years, the standardized tests have been not super reliable just because of the pandemic. So part of the work that we're doing with great schools and in collaboration with all the superintendents, we've had a couple of meetings where, everybody's come together with the building principals, especially the middle school principals, to talk about how students are recommended, because we do see some discrepancies in the recommendations for where students come in to, it was the old B level, it's now the CC level, which is college and career ready, or the A level, or the honors level. And that's an equity issue that we're looking very, very closely at as a team, and looking at the in-house tests that are given in the 8th grade. The SBAC, when it's up and running again, is part of an indicator. It's not the, tell all be all, but it's part of that indicator. And then their performance in their classrooms. And what we've shared, and Lou DiLoretto met with all of the building counselors and principals to share a form where, we went back to our core areas and said, what is the difference between an A level and a B level? What's the knowledge and skills that you're really asking for, so that the counselors can make an informed decision based on their performance on their test scores and their performance in class. And then what are the academic expectations that that a student would need to be successful? And so those conversations are ongoing. So it's not any one test, but we certainly, we look at how, students perform, on the PSATs. We give PSATs for 9th and 10th graders, as well as in preparation for the SAT in their junior year. So we have that historical data as soon as they get to us. So we track all of that. We're not at a place right now where we have a presentation that we can give, but it's certainly information that we could get for you. And it's going to be interesting. We're really, we've shared some of that information, the preliminary information, with our board around, what are the patterns and trends for how each of the students perform, how their performance in the middle school translate into their placement in E.O. Smith. Are there movements from where they're recommended to where they actually, end up? Because they might get recommended for a B level, but our teachers will notice that they're not being challenged enough, and that they need to move up to the A level or vice versa. We prefer to have it be the first that students need to move up a level in order to be successful, to have the opportunity. And then, where do they go to, where did they go to college? So we're really collecting that information and starting to look at it. And really the focus is leveling the playing field from that equity perspective.
All right, sounds good. It's just good information to know, and I'm more so for the Board of Ed than for us, but just you know, because I talked with Craig this week and something he was kind of hinting at that, you know, maybe our math needed to be a little bit increased. So
Yeah,
just kind of following up, that's all.
you know what, in all honesty, there are, we need to do a lot of work as a school, high school. I've been very transparent about that, and our teachers are working hard. They always have. But, you know, really looking at students as individuals. You know, we talked a lot about jagged learning profiles. Kids come with strengths, they come with areas that they need support. We are not widgets, our kids are not widgets. And if we, you know, expect them to be taught all the same and to learn in the same way in the same amount of time, we're missing the boat for some really talented, capable kids. So as we continue to explore that data, and we're exploring the data as sending districts, you know, there's things that the middle schools and the elementary schools can do to help support student readiness, but there's certainly things on our end at the high school level that we need to be doing too, in regards to personalizing the experience for kids and holding them all accountable to really high levels of learning. Any other questions?
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got another quick
Well-
question comes to mind. Did the region receive any ARPA funds, Sharon?
We received the ARP funds. I want to say, so we have the ARP ESSER grant that comes directly to the school.
Yeah.
I want to say, and I would have to check on it, Bill, it's something I'm less familiar with. So I'm going to say that we don't directly receive it, but the town does.
Okay.
And that would go through our finance director.
Because I know in our case, we received, well, about 1.2 million as a town.
Mhm.
And then the school received separate funding with the ARPA. Don't hold me to it, but if I recall right, Judy, maybe you remember better than I do. I think it was about 340,000 or 350,000, might have been a bit more.
Mm.
Yeah, it
Um,
was like 400 something.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, so that's our that I believe that's the American Rescue Program.
Correct.
And so that's what I've been referring to as the ARP ESSER 3. So we
Okay.
received about $830,000
Okay.
that we've been using for a variety of different things, you know, positions. We've hired, you know, we've hired folks. I have 2 curriculum instruction and assessment coaches who, and I can actually, I presented this on Tuesday, because I'm looking to revise the grant based on now what I know the need actually is.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of it's to offset applicable pieces of our budget. And some is, you know, moving it to accommodate the positions that we need and the professional development and curriculum writing that we need to have. So I have 2 curriculum instruction and assessment coaches hired with those funds, who have really been helping to support teachers, personalized learning for kids, and also help to update our curriculum that needs to really be focused and looked at from a student-centered approach and a social emotional learning approach.
Yeah, I know last year there were conversations about, you know, emotional support and that for the students going through this COVID, but I thought, and I forget who it was, but somebody made a clear point that we've also got to think about our teachers and the impact that they've had. You know, and hopefully we can address that.
They have been through a lot, and you know, and they've adjusted and been, you know, very nimble in their approach. So
Yeah.
part of our visioning for this year is, you know, what have we learned? What have we learned from COVID? And you know, what are the pieces? You know, where were we as a school? You know, what the historical pieces of EO that are so important and that we're really proud of and we want to maintain and sustain. What have we learned through COVID that may shift some of the things that we do to
Yeah.
better meet the needs of kids? And how do we support our teachers in making those shifts in meeting their needs?
So, Sharon, what happens with those individuals that you hired with those ESSR funds? I know that you can have up to 3 years to spend them.
Mhm.
What happens afterwards? Are you putting them full-time or are you just removing them or how's that work?
So we hired, so one of the individuals is a teacher on special assignment who was a teacher in district. And she's on a 2-year contract as a teacher on a special assignment with those funds. So and the other individual is was a former consultant and administrator and with a very specific skill set that we were looking for, who also is on a 2-year contract. So they're both very aware that the funding ends at a certain date. I would love to keep them both. So over the course of the next couple of years of budgeting, it really is about need. And, we wanted to make sure that we had concentrated, almost intensified support for teachers through this transition. And also to really focus on our curriculum, which was, we get evaluated by NEASC. They come every 10 years. And that was the one piece that I'm on NEASC. I'm on the NEASC commission. I'm actually the chair right now of the commission for public elementary, middle, and high schools. So I know going out on visits that many schools, I don't want to say most schools, but many schools are missing the foundational element on curriculum because it's very difficult with living documents to have them all be in the same place at the same time, in the same format, and the same platform. But we're gearing up to do that over the next couple of years to get to that place.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Judy, it's Paul, real quick for
Hi, Paul.
Sharon. I want to make sure I understood that right. And with that new budget number, it looks like the town of Ashford will actually go down just a tiny bit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
With where it
and then
stands right now.
Okay, the second question actually has to do with looking forward. The student projection numbers, when we project those out, and it says in here it includes tech students and all that.
Mhm.
How does how do the students going to the technical schools affect the E.O. Smith budget for each town? Or
So,
for us, for Ashford?
yeah, they still count. So
Okay.
they count as your total number because we have to pay for, well, because you're charged on each of the kids who would be enrolling at EO, and we have to pay for them to go to the technical.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, they count. I think it's I'm just gonna give a little bit of a spoiler alert. As much as the projections from the Prada report and things like that have been in place predict decreases in population, one of the things that we are looking to do as a district, we are really, we're very proud of EO and what we have to offer kids. We want to continue those programs and expand them. And we want to bring in more students. So one of the things that we are looking at is a reorganization of our depot campus, particularly as it relates to really providing a comprehensive program that still focuses on the essence of it being a big picture school and providing internships and a more personalized internship-based education, but also providing the appropriate social emotional support so that students that we would normally outplace we can keep in-house. We want to keep our kids home. We consider them to be our greatest asset. And that would help us to kind of offset in order to increase our programming and provide opportunities for the kids.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, Sharon, I am a former Panther. Also, I went to E.O. Smith through my high school, and I really appreciate you taking your time to speak to us. You did an awesome job.
Thank you so much. It was so nice meeting you all. And again, I just extend the invite. If there's any questions, feel free to email or call. I'm happy to talk to you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
night. Have a good meeting.
Thanks, Sharon.
Good night. Okay. Does anybody want to have discussion over what Sharon just explained to us for E.O. Smith? Are we all good?
I found it very informative. I thought she did a terrific job on it. Unfortunately, this year, hearing about budgets going down over what is anticipated is going to be a rarity. But I'm grateful for her taking the time and joining us. I think it worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was very thoughtful with the budget. I thought she explained things really well, especially the her savings, where she went for savings.
Yep.
It was nice for her to spend the time with us, that's all.
She was very appreciative of the call when I called her, Judy, and of course, we're appreciative that she did take the time to join us, but maybe we'll try to make that a habit.
Yeah, well, I was told
I
that,
actually like it. It's nice to hear from the superintendent of the district, the region,
Yeah.
Hey,
well,
Mike, I have a technical question for you.
Sure.
Is it the same link for the 7 o'clock meeting?
Yes,
So we don't have to leave this link then? That's my
No.
question.
just
Okay.
as long you adjourn, I'll stop the recording and then we'll restart it when you get the next one going.
Okay.
yeah, so, yeah, it was unusual for us to take that route, but I really, I would look forward to her coming. I think it should be an annual thing. It's nice to have somebody that wants to participate and, come talk to us from the region. All right.
Judy, if I could just ask one small favor. I know you would ask some of my department people to join us. And I know a couple of them are running short on time and they've had long days.
Yep.
If there's any way we could work them in initially, I think it might be beneficial to them and give them a chance, and they can go on and do their business. I know Melissa from our social service has been working most of the day, and if it's at all possible, if we could take her and let, she'll happy to address any questions you may have or comments. And we perhaps can let her go.
Okay, that'd be fine. The question I had, I asked Cheryl yesterday, so, for her, but, I'd like to meet her anyway. I'm sure the other, people would too. So why don't
She's
we,
here.
why don't we adjourn from this? We'll adjourn from this special meeting. We'll adjourn at, 6:58. All those in favor? Oh, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Paul.
Jesse Burnham, second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Garth?
Yes. Aye.
Aye. Okay, so meeting has been adjourned.